Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of From a Woman to a Leader. And I'm delighted to host today Lisette Zounon. Lisette is a leader in quality assurance, and she's a public speaker, and she's a podcaster. So many things. Hi, Lisette, how are you today?
Hello, thank you for having me in your podcast, Limo. I'm excited to be here. I'm glad we were able to find a time to do this. So thank you for having
Yes,
me.
definitely. Time zone was a little bit of a challenge, but we got over it. So thank you so much for making the time for me. And we'll talk today about women in quality assurance and how to know if that's the right track for you, how to build your career. And we'll see how things will flow. We'll go from
Yeah,
there.
totally. Yes.
Yeah. So Lisette, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, about your professional background, or anything you want to share?
Yeah, so my background is I'm an engineer by trade. So I had a bachelor in computer science engineering and a master in computer engineering. And my first job out of college, actually, I did an internship at Apple Computer, in software testing, actually. And I enjoyed it. And then after that, I became a software engineer. So I work for one of the largest telecommunication company in the world, Nortel. They no longer existed, but they were like the biggest one back then. And that's where I started as a software engineer, and I really enjoyed. But one of the things that I realized was I was spending a lot more time when I was coding in making sure that my code was really testable. I was spending a lot of time documenting my code so that whoever was testing it, it make it easier for them. And I was working a lot with testing team as well, in defining the test cases. So I thought that I loved that, but I didn't really look too much into it. And then after I lost that job because the company went bankrupt, my next job was at Yahoo, where I was a white box text engineer, which was a perfect position because it was a mix of like an engineering skill, developer skill, and getting into quality. So that's where I really spent the bulk of my career, really like understanding software component, working with development team, and then even becoming a lead later on before I left Yahoo, leading an organization that were like geographically diverse in 4 different places in the world, Dallas, California, India, and also in Australia. So from that moment, I got some really good experience. Then I started working for a couple of startups, you know. Then from there, I got into leadership, and from there, literally, I start creating Q organization from the ground up. I'll go to company, create Q organization, and I also got into agile. So I'm an agile leader. I've been to practicing agile for about 12 years now, at the same time that I've been leading a Q organization. So that's where really, and then from one role to another, you're learning, right? It's different challenge that you have to face, different things that you have to learn, different way that you need to show up as a leader. And that's where I am today. Today, I'm the director of Q engineering at a robotic startups called Fort Robotics. So we enable really all the machine of the today and machine of the future for safety and security to allow them to be, used in a safe way. So that's my role. So in this precise role, I have to bring in my hardware experience and also my firmware and software experience. So which is something that is very unique that I've never done before. So that is exciting as well. Exciting challenge. So that's in a nutshell, Whenever people ask me about my career, I try to give them like where it start, and then the middle is just, a lot of learning. But that's where I am today. So happy to, dive in or
Yeah.
answer any other question.
Yeah. So, what was kind of the turning point for you? I mean, you mentioned you started as a software engineer. What was the turning point for you that you decided, I am going to focus on quality?
Yeah, that's a good question because and this is the controversial answer, right? For me, and especially now that we have a lot of AI going, from the get to go, I felt like, if you have a good requirement, you can code easily, Coding is not it never been a challenging for me, but I felt like the challenge was, delivering quality. Everybody can just focus and do a coding. But delivering quality require you to have a holistic view of the product, the application, and it really allow you to collaborate with everybody in the value stream. So you gotta collaborate with the product owner or the business analyst, depending on what framework they're using. You got to collaborate with the developer. You got to collaborate with now DevOps, because QA is part of the DevOps. So I just love that part that you get to collaborate with everybody in the value stream to deliver quality, and that's why I changed, and that's why I stuck into it until today, because I felt like you require a lot of skill set just instead of just being a software engineer.
Yeah, absolutely. So, if there's a woman out there starting her career, because we're talking about women here, right?
Right.
I mean, how would she know if QA is the right path, or in general, quality assurance, anything about quality is the right career path for her?
That's a good question, because I coach a lot of women and even men too, right? And what I always ask them is first, you have to be willing to learn all the time. Because if you look on my resume, I've never worked for the same kind of company twice. So I've worked literally in various industry, all the company that I've been in. And so the main thing is to stay curious. So you got to be willing to learn, always stay curious, but always have the ability to question things. I think curious and questioning things, because you're gonna get a requirement, right? And you have to have the ability to like ask all the question, because the question that you need to ask are actually things that were not written. So you have to be able to connect the dots between everything that is being telling you, and also advocated for the end user, because your goal as a quality person is really to make sure that the product come out and then you work for the end user or whoever is using this product. So those are the things that I usually list, which has nothing to do with any technical skills. When you think about it, have nothing to do with any tools, because us tech folks always like, what tool should I use? But I feel like that is like how you have to start at a very high level. Those are the skill set that you need to hone in. And once you have that and you really have the interest into the quality field, all the other things just come naturally.
So, what tips would you give to someone? Okay, let's say they know that they want to become a QA and build a career in QA. What kind of tips would you give to them? How would they start?
Yeah, my first tip would be, get to learning, find those if you I would say like go to like a course. And sadly, when we were going to school so many years ago, there was no QA courses. There's no course, in your curriculum about testing. I had a couple of testing book, because I just felt like, okay, if I'm coding, I want to test. And I had a professor, rest in peace, he passed away a couple of years ago. He was telling us about testing. That was like one course where one chapter in the class was about testing. That was it. But I felt like that was an area that was not talked about. So I will say, yeah, go about learning what is testing about. I just closed a boot camp that we did for African girls, in collaboration with African Agility and my company's ESI Academy. And we had like an 8 weeks, 8 section, 4 weeks boot camp, and it was really boot camp style, because the topic that we cover are really super important, but you have to like sit down and really dive into all this information. So try to find something like that. It doesn't have to be like a really dense course. It could be a little bit spread, 12 weeks, but you have to take some time to get to learning about the industry, right? And then the next step is get an internship or get a contract position where you join in as a junior QA, and then you start learning, because the proof is in the pudding.
Absolutely. And do you know of any, I mean, other than the boot camp that you said you did for African women, do you know of any other boot camps you heard about in that industry that are good?
I don't know. I don't know. I know that there's a lot of course online, and everybody, you have to realize what is your learning style, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm good at like I can just go on a YouTube, have it on the side here. I'm listening to it. I'm even multitasking, doing other thing, and then I just check in and look at it. But I think you have to try to figure out what is your learning style. Are you like reading book? Do you like doing boot camp? Do you like listen to a podcast, a technical podcast? So you have to find out what is your learning style, and then based on that, go hunt for the knowledge. That's also part of the the thing, because in tech, nobody's really gonna give you a bulletproof way of like learning this. There's so much information out there, so you have to like hunt for the right information. But you have to know
Absolutely.
what you want to do first. Do you even want to do this?
Absolutely. And definitely, I mean, you mentioned something that I know is very critical, and I was always looking for that. Someone that is an independent learner. Basically, that's what you're saying. Like, you need to know what's your learning style and find there's so much information, abundance of information out there. Find whatever is the right way for you to consume
Right.
information and learn. And you need
Yeah.
to be able to learn independently and seek out knowledge, whether it's books, podcasts, courses, or what have you, and grow.
Yes. Yes.
And I want to ask you about your career. I mean, you have a very, very impressive career.
Mm.
Tell us a little bit about some challenges that you faced and how you were able to overcome and grow into leadership roles. Very impressive roles, heading quality, a director of quality.
Yeah, that's it. That's a good question. That, it's like, how long do we have to to get into that? I think the way that I see the challenge is, because I mean, if you poke my head, I can't really tell you one or two challenge, right? But the way that I see challenges, I see it as part of the problem solving. So, and I don't like to take one challenge that I learned from one organization to another organization. That's another thing that I don't usually do. It's probably the way that my brain is wired. But the challenge for me is the people usually. It's really the people. At the core of it, it's always been the people. So it's never the technical skill. Like I mentioned earlier, I've been going from one organization or one industry to another. So when I come in with a blank slate to understand what is the business here. What is the product that we're solving? What does our customer expect from us? And how do we build quality into it, and deliver quality for our customer? So that is always the framework that I go in with. Now, what you will always hear people in quality say is, when we go in, we get hired, it's like, we want you here to solve quality, right? And what you unravel is so many other things, it's almost like literally. And I always joke that QA people are QA agent, right? When you come in, you are an agent of change. So you come in, the problem is quality. People know that that is a problem. Then you start looking for the symptoms. So you have to navigate different departments, collaborate with different people, understanding what is the pain point. And then from there, try to find a solution, create a strategy at a very high level for the organization that will define and solve those problems. And when you're doing strategy and you want to bring change, part of change management is really, people are the core of change management, right? So challenge is always, some people are not willing to change. That's
Yes.
really, if we want to say where is the thread in everything, that's really where the thread is. It's
Yes.
always boiled down to, people are not willing to change. And when I was younger, it was not easy for me to understand that. But now, on the other side of this 40, I feel like I get it a little bit more. People are just not easily changeable. So I no longer attach myself to how fast people should change. I know that, because I think also experience and confidence give me the ability to realize that I know the solution. I know how the solution should look. I know the way we should get there, but I need everybody to realize that as well, and how fast we all gonna get there. It's gonna depend on every people ability to understand, and get buy into the mission and the strategy. So those are like the main challenge that I always face, is the people,
Yes.
the lack of understanding of the people, understanding the process, the lack of understanding of people, understanding even why do we need a QA team, or what does QA do, the lack of understanding of like, QA is always the bottleneck, they're wasting our time. So those are like, it's different version of those. And it's always driven by how people feel about, the role in the organization.
Yeah, and you mentioned something very interesting, and I wanted to ask you about it. So QA, as a software engineer, and I led engineering organizations, QA was always considered, they're they're not as important, as you said, they are, keep holding us back. Maybe we don't need them. How do you advocate for the need for QA? And why is it even needed, right? We have DevOps, everything is automated, we have AI. Why do we need QA teams?
Yeah, that's a good question. This is the question that I asked before I join an organization. Because what I don't want is to join an organization and spend like 3 years of my life trying to explain to people why we're here. For me, it's all about delivering value. So we feel here we are delivering value. And sadly, QA is just one of those roles where I always say, like to Joe, nobody know that they need you until something is burning, right? Like everything is fine. But then as soon as something is burning, everybody's like, where are the QA people? What happened? Why is this not working? So we always from day one has to show value. Why are we doing this? And it starts from the top. It starts from the leadership. Leadership need to understand, why do we have QA people in the building? And then my job, then it start making my job easier, right? Because now I'm not gonna spend the next 3 years of my life explaining everything. I want my team or the organization that I lead to focusing on delivering value. And that's what we're supposed to do, deliver value. And that means different thing for different organization and different thing for different team, and we are usually sit in the middle of everybody, right? So we have to act as a glue. And change agent is my favorite word. When we are change agent, we question requirement, we innovate on the requirement, and we become SME, subject matter expert of the product that we are delivering.
Yeah.
And I've been in organization where we have achieved that so much that, when somebody new come in, or a customer come in, or we get like a client site visit, they want to see our product, they're like, oh, go talk to the QA folks, because they know in and out of the application, right? So for me, it starts from the leadership. The leadership of the organization need to understand why we need QA. Don't just bring QA in to check a box, because then that impact my mental health. I've been in organization where, all I'm just spending time is like explaining myself, explaining why we're here, and
Yeah.
it go back to what I was saying earlier. Some of the challenges, the people don't really understand even what QA do, And for
Yeah.
me, I learned it just a couple of years, just recently, I think 2020. I was, because I participated a lot of you say I'm a public speaker, so I participate a lot in conference and panel. So just on the conference, and this was after the conference, somebody pinged me and said they wanted to have like a chat with me, And when I joined the chat with this gentleman, he told me that, the way that I explained QA was so different than how he expect QA to be, that it was refreshing to him. I was like, okay, what have been your experience, So he's like, I actually, as a project manager, never know what these QA people do,
Yeah. So if you
And
had to summarize kind of, in a sentence or two, what QA means to you, or what's kind of the impact of QA in high level, right? I mean,
yes,
on the world even, what would you say?
no, QA is really here to making sure that the product deliver on the requirement and deliver what the customer expects. That is what it is. Every other thing is just minutia. Every other thing is just technical jargon that nobody cares about. At the end of the day, QA is just making sure that we deliver what the customer expects. So if I go on a website and the website user experience is poor, I'm always wondering, like, do they have a QA department? Who is testing this website? Who allowed this website to go out, to go live in production? And if you dig, if I have time and I dig through their LinkedIn and talk to people, you realize that they don't have a QA department. They're probably thinking like you say, they're like, oh, we don't need QA people. Because 5 times of 10 job that I have in my career when I join, it's always because they've been in crisis mode. It's because they've been functioning for the last 5 or 10 years with no QA department. And their hand has been like burned to a point where, they're like, okay, next time we get a budget or something, we're going to hire a QA leader like me. And then she's going to put a team in place. Right?
Yes.
Which I'm always like, what have you learned? That's usually my interview. Like, what have you learned? Let's make sure that we learn clearly, because people, I don't know if this is something that we did in the QA industry, but people feel like our job is so trivial, like, oh, I could just go in and test. Can you?
So how would you help people realize that it's more than just as simple as, oh, we just test?
Yeah, because go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, because software and hardware is complex. It's extremely complex. These days, we say we have ChatGPT, we have AI. It still remains complex. The AI has not made it extremely easy for you to just create a piece of product out of a vacuum, right? You have to sit down, figure out what is your requirement, what is the flow. Somebody has to go in, implement it, and it's just usually not one person, it's a bunch of people implementing it. Humans are riddled with error. We are not perfect. And because humans are not perfect, but we're trying to create a product that is as perfect as possible, you need to infuse QA people into the mix so that they can double check the work and make sure that things work as we say. That is simple as that, for anybody that's not even a technical person. You realize that I try not to use a lot of technical jargon when I'm talking, because I feel like, that's where you lose people, right, into the whole technical conversation.
Absolutely.
So for me, it's that simple. When I go to like my daughter elementary school for career day and I explain to them what I do, that's how I explain it. Somebody needs to check that app that you're using, because the first time the developer is never going to be perfect, because human beings are not perfect. We make mistake all the time. So it's baking into the process that there will be mistake, but then you cannot ask the same person that made the code to also check it. They can check it to a point, but it's valuable to have a third person, in the mix as a QA person to do that check as well. And QA do a lot more than that, but in a very simple explanation. That's how I will define it.
That's great. That's great explanation. And tell me something. Let's say there's a woman listening to us and she's in QA and she wants to get to the levels you got to. She wants to start QA organizations from scratch. She wants to become eventually head of QA or director. What would be some advice you would give that woman? How can she grow the career for,
Yeah, I think to grow your career, you really have to have a game plan of like where you want to go, right? And try to understand what are the skills that you need for the next level. Because, a QA analyst, a senior QA analyst, or a QA manager, there's level to it, right? So you need to know, first of all, when in my team, I'm always telling them, this is the path, my job is for you to take my job in the next couple of years, right? I don't want to be in this role forever. So create a plan for yourself about where you want to go, and then start talking to people like me to understand, what are the skill sets. So do like a SWOT skills analysis, pretty much like your strength and your weakness, and understand for this role, what are the skills that I need, and how do I, start honoring those skills. Because as a leader, my goal is to make my team shine, to coach them, to guide them, right? And the value for me building QA organization is I've been a QA person, so I've been in their shoes and I understand the challenge and I can easily coach them. Because the thing that happen in corporate is most QA team don't have a QA manager or QA director as their lead. They usually are shoved under like a director of engineering or director of software, other other roles that cannot relate to the day-to-day. Like if you've never been a QA person, how can you manage QA folks? So that there's also value into that. So that's a route. And a lot of people don't follow this route because they fear that, there's no job security maybe, or because the field is not so valuable, as we mentioned earlier. Like, why should I even want to go do that? But so you really want to know that you want to do that, create your plan, and then try to find the skill set that you need.
Yeah, and find someone like you to coach you. If
Yes.
if you don't have anyone in your surrounding to help
Your
you, right?
surrounding. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, this is so important because not always we have people that can support us in our growth. Not always people have managers like you, Lisette, who help people reporting to them to get to the next level.
That's true. That's true. How will I know? Because I've always done it to people, but I've always been a little bit grateful to have, a director of QA engineer when I was at Yahoo. That was extremely helpful. We never talk about my career, but I could learn from him, how he was dealing with and coaching the group. So I learned from him indirectly because I didn't even have a plan to become a director of QA back then. I just knew that that was a great way of managing the team, a cross-functional QA team. So yeah, it's really valuable to see somebody in the action and learn from that person.
Absolutely. And what helped you push yourself forward and get to leadership roles, especially being a woman and a woman of color?
Hmm. What? I think that answer is when I was 12 years old, I was told that at 12, I was already quote unquote bossy. And I always go back to that because I think I have a 12-year-old daughter. So for me, it's a critical time, right? And I just learned that a couple of years ago from my cousin that I grew up with, that because I get this question all the time. People ask me like, when did you know you were going to be a leader? And I was looking in my past and I could only remember that when I was 12 years old, my mom was putting me in charge with everything that happened in the house when she stepped out. So I grew up to know that I was always going to be a leader at whatever I was doing. So even if I was a marketing person, I was going to try to, become a marketing leader at some point. So for me, it just became natural. And I was mentioned, my manager that I have at Yahoo, not only I was focusing on my project, but I really care about what other people were doing too in my team and just try to help them, because for me, I felt like just trying to help us deliver value for the organization as QA people. So naturally, when I finish my work or when we're in team meeting and other people are like sharing their challenge, I just try to help them, spend some time with them. So those were like how I started. And it has not been easy for sure, because I don't know a lot of, now I do, but when I was a couple of years ago, I didn't know a lot of Black women like me being director of QA,
Yeah.
who even like call them and say, help me, tell me. So, but I had a lot of good mentor too, that were other people, other women, from other culture and races, that have been instrumental also in helping me navigate this this tech leadership career. Definitely.
Definitely.
So
Definitely, it's not easy.
your podcast is super welcome, because I think we did not have a lot of these kind of outlets for women to even hear, about people like me or people like you 10 years ago.
Yes, yes, definitely. And how would a woman find a mentor? I mean, based on your experience, what was the best advice you can give for a woman who wants a mentor?
This conversation of mentorship and sponsorship, for me, is a tricky one, because I've always felt like you should not go and hunt for mentor. It should be a natural conversation. So when I was at Apple Computer for my first internship, they give us mentor. My mentor was the VP of HR, human resource. You know, but was that helpful? Not really, because she has no idea what an engineer deal with in every day. She was talking to me. She was a great person, great woman, but she was just talking to me from her bubble as HR and working with just, leaders. So I think you need different mentor at different time in your career, right? You don't, if you're just a QA person, you don't need a CTO to be your mentor. It's a little bit too far. Maybe you need just a QA manager. And I always ask people to have mentors that are outside of their company, right? So I
Definitely.
had various mentors. I had a mentor that was an IP intellectual property lawyer when I was at Nortel. So every company that I've been, if mostly I would say 5 out of 10 company, I've always had some kind of mentor, but I've never been lucky to have a sponsor. At least I don't think so, right? Where it's somebody that is like outside of, that is in the company at a C level and is really rooting for me, or even giving me the game plan, if you want to call it, or the blueprint of like, I think if you do this, you're gonna get to this role. Nope, I don't think, I've never had that. I've always had people that I connect with, you know, that just became my mentor at any given time. And most of my long-lasting mentoring relationship has been outside of work. That's why I feel like those are more fruitful, because they can really, they're not into the bureaucracy of the organization. They're really outside, and they can really listen to you from a very distant way and compare with what they know about you and really give you, valuable feedback. Because you have to trust your mentor too. You have to trust that your mentor is out here looking for your best interest, and you have to create a safe space between you and mentor to tell them about your real life, your real life, not your life that you show up at work with, but everything, your whole entire life, as in like your family life, your work life, your struggle, your challenge, and your fear. So I think the best mentor are people that you can find outside of work. So I've been in an organization in the past, like MentorNet. I don't think they're still around, where I had people from corporate that were my mentor. And those were good ones, And there were technical folks, technical women working at IBM, working at Accenture that you can, connect with. But it's always tricky. I think what we need to start pushing the boundary is to ask executive in organization to be a sponsor for people that don't look like them. I think that's where I want the conversation to be, because mentor, we can find our own mentor, but the sponsor, they need to gravitate to you, from my understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. And what are you hoping to achieve in the future?
That's good. So one of the things that I definitely want to have my own company. I have my company right now, a consultancy that I started in 2019, in the middle, almost like before the pandemic. So I want to grow my own consultancy, in Africa and in the Middle East, and also in the United States. That's my big that's my big goal. You asked me the question, so yeah, I always have that goal in the back of my head, and just trying to create a good game plan to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Is what I'm trying to strive for.
Yeah. And how can people reach out to you?
Yeah,
what's the best way?
Yeah, LinkedIn is probably the best way. I'm not on Twitter. I mean, I have a Twitter thing. LinkedIn is probably the best way for this kind of conversation. So my LinkedIn is simply Lisette Zounon. So
yeah, and I'll post your LinkedIn profile URL on the podcast episode. Thank you so much, Lisette, for being here today. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today.
Thank you, Limo. This was good. This was like, I have to go back and go listen to it myself, but this was insightful question that you asked. Thank you for doing this for women, because as I mentioned, I don't remember the past 10 years ago having a podcast that talk about career for women specifically. So I am happy to help anybody that is interested in getting keyword or even engineering in general, coach them or just talk to them about what is it like to be on this side. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.